3, 2, 1. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the first ever American Heritage virtual chocolate cooking class. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to my friend, Justin Cherry.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so everyone, as most of you know, American Heritage chocolate is based on recipes from the 18th century, and that made it a perfect fit for us to partner with someone like Justin. Justin is a historic food interpreter, and he actually travels the country teaching people about how early Americans would have eaten in the 18th century. He has partnered with us to create this fabulous 18th century historic holidays cookbook, and we are so thrilled to be able to share one of the very special recipes in this book today. So we are actually going to be sharing a recipe. It is our bunk cake recipe. So Justin, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with historic foodways and what is that?
So I really grew up doing living history with my family and traveling all over the East Coast with them. And I was also working in kitchens at the time. So, it was natural together for me to get out of the kitchen and jump back into the past and bake historic recipes using period grains and all these ingredients. And that's why I love working with the American Heritage chocolate, because you provide that.
Absolutely. Well, we are thrilled to be working with you as well. So should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
All right. I'm a very, very messy baker and cook. So I got my apron on. I know you're already ready to go, but this is like occupational hazard for me. Gotta be ready for the mess. So tell us about the specific recipe and how you actually did the research to find it.
Yeah, so this is our chocolate pound cake. And the way I found this was digging through some old manuscripts and a few 19th and even 20th century cookbooks that refer back to it. And this recipe in particular comes from 1814 from an account book. But the family it came from actually was in Maryland in the 17th century. And actually generations of this family would be very influential in Maryland and Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia. The original recipe was actually called Mrs. Chew's pound cake. And the Chew family started in Maryland, and eventually Chief Justice of Pennsylvania in the late 18th century was part of the Chew family. So it's a great recipe that I found going through old manuscripts and flipping through some books, and it was a perfect one to complement the chocolate.
Awesome. So hopefully everybody who's following along at home, you have, you just saw the recipe that Justin shared with you. You've got all of your ingredients out, but don't worry, we're going to be taking this one step at a time. And we're also going to be stopping and answering questions. So please drop your questions in the chat. I have my handy cell phone here, so I will be getting those questions sent to me. So please do send questions for me, send questions for Justin, but we're so excited to be cooking with you today.
Okay, let's get started. You should have some butter being softened, and we're going to start out with that and the sugar, and we're going to cream that. So go ahead and put the butter in your mixer.
So Justin, we're doing 1 cup of butter. So if you've got the big sticks like me, you want 2 sticks for your 1 cup of butter, correct?
Yep.
And how much sugar do we want folks putting in there?
So the sugar is 1 1/3 cups. Whether you prefer to use the fine refined sugar or like me, I prefer to use like raw cane sugar or demerara, that would work. Especially since it's a historic recipe. but we're going to go ahead and put the sugar right on top of that.
Just for you folks at home, I actually, you could be doing this with a stand mixer. You could be doing this with a hand mixer. You could also be doing this by hand if you're feeling like it. But Justin recommended that we use this tool right here. If you have this tool for your stand mixer, it really helps with the creaming of the butter process. All right, Justin, should we get our mixers going?
Yep, let's go ahead and get those mixers revved up. You can mix on, if you have a KitchenAid, it's mixing at like 4, or if you have like a hand mixer, you can do it on medium. And what we're looking for is for that butter and sugar to sort of cream and come together really nicely. And if it starts to build up on the sides, you can use a spatula and scrape the sides a little bit, because we're going to be adding in a couple more ingredients here in a second.
All right. I got my butter out, but it's still a little firm, so I'm going to need a little extra power over here.
Sure, you can lift it on high and let it rip, because that'll just actually it'll warm the butter. The heat from that paddle with the friction will cause that butter to soften up a little bit quicker.
Perfect. So Justin, I'm at home today, but you're not at home. Where are you cooking with us today?
I'm actually in a events kitchen on the campus of Mount Vernon. I'm up here doing a winter program, a Christmas winter lights program. So I have my oven set up over in the Bowling Green, which is one of the best spots to be a baker, to wake up in the morning, and Mount Vernon is right there with the sun rising.
Wow. Now, when is that presentation happening?
So it was the past 2 weekends, and it's also this upcoming weekend, and then the 3 days directly after Christmas. But unfortunately, I won't be there for the after Christmas one. I'm going to be spending the holidays at home back in South Carolina.
Perfect. So everyone, while you're creaming your butter and your sugar, let's also preheat the oven to 350, okay? I'm gonna pop over and make sure that my oven's warming up. Now, Justin, we had a little bit of a scare this morning. We were about to go full on 18th century. Can you share with our audience what happened because of the beautiful snowstorm that hit your area?
Yeah, the gas wasn't working properly in the oven. So when I arrived early this afternoon to check on it, the gas really wasn't flowing. So luckily I had my reproduction clay oven not too far away. And, so we were kind of having to bake in that. So, but unfortunately that happened. But at the same time, the crew here at Mount Vernon kind of came together for me, and they fixed it right before we hopped on.
Well, it's a good thing that you travel with a 2-ton clay oven. I mean, we would have really been up a creek if you didn't have your big oven.
Yeah.
And some of those pictures that we were showing at the top of the show showed your clay oven. I mean, I've eaten from your clay oven. I've seen it at events. It truly is a sight to behold. There's nothing like eating a fresh. I think, what I remember the most is the rice waffles that you made, that you topped with American Heritage. In fact, and that recipe is actually in this cookbook. So I had it a little over a year ago. Oh, there's the clay oven. Y'all can see that pop up. So it's pretty fabulous. And he cooks bread, he cooks desserts, he cooks stews. He can cook anything that you guys are interested in. All right.
How's your mixer coming there, okay?
Justin, what consistency should our butter and sugar be?
It should basically be, the butter coating the sugar, and you can kind of see the particles of the sugar in it. Just soft enough to kind of touch. It should be kind of, if you can see that texture.
All right. Well, I think mine is looking pretty nice and mixed up. So what's next?
Okay, so we're going to separate eggs, and this is a very important part of the process because eggs are going to be our leavener. In the 18th century, they were using things, like potash and pearl ash that were used as early leaveners, but there wasn't any baking powder or baking soda. So the eggs are going to act as the leaveners. And an easy comparison is really to talk about like souffles. Think of it like bulking up, but the amount of flour in here is going to keep everything nice and tight and risen. So when you pop it out, it won't deflate or anything like a souffle, but just that rising action of the eggs themselves is enough to stabilize this. So if you separate your yolks and your whites, because the whites we'll use in a little bit after we're done with the first mixture, we really just want to add in these yolks. And it's okay if the yolks break. Just make sure that they don't get too much involved with the actual egg whites, because that'll affect the fluffiness of it.
Justin, do you have tips on separating eggs? I know I try and crack it right in the middle, and I kind of do the pour and move. Are there any special chef tricks that we should know about separating eggs?
Yeah, so what you actually want to do, and I think I learned this a very long time ago from a famous chef in America, a famous French chef who moved to America in the 70s, Jacques Pepin. You always want to cook your eggs on something flat. A lot of people crack them on the side of the bowl, and that'll cause crackage of the egg, but also sometimes little pieces of the shell can get into your mix that way. So if you break them straight, and then I like to hold my hand up and basically separate it with my index finger and my middle finger, and then have the white slip through the crack of your hand.
Wow. Okay, I have not been that brave yet. I still do the back and forth, but I am constantly fishing eggshell crack, like little pieces out of my my egg whites, because I do it on the side of a bowl. So I can't wait to try the Jacques Pepin trick of cracking it on a flat surface.
A really good way actually too, if you do drop an eggshell, you know how you're always chasing eggshells.
Yeah, it's always on the move.
Yeah, so take a little bit, take the cracked empty part of the shell, and it's like naturally attracted to it. So you can actually scoop it and it'll cling because of the membrane action on the outside of the shell.
Man, you're full of fun tips, guys. I hope everybody's taking notes. All right, so if we have our 5 egg yolks, are we putting it in with our sugar and butter?
Yep.
Okay. And Justin, we actually had our first question come in on the chat. Somebody wants to know, what is the process of cooking in the oven and how hot does it get?
So the oven itself gets up to upwards of 1400 degrees. Obviously, we don't want to bake at that temperature. Easy comparison is to think pizzas. They usually bake at 900 to 1000 degrees, but you're baking with flame. So those only take about 90 seconds. So what I do is I get the oven super hot to about 1000, and then I shovel and rake all of the coals out of my oven, and then I sweep it and I mop it, and then I can add my risen dough for bread. Now, if I'm baking cakes or pies or anything else, I'll usually leave the coals in there, get it up to about 800 degrees, and then I'll let it naturally cool down till it's, about 400 to 500 degrees, because I'll be cooking with my oven door shut. So those items you'll actually taste a little bit of the smoke in those things because there's coals still in there. So it's very much a timing thing. And also you're doing a lot of waiting also, because if it's too hot, you're sitting there waiting. And hopefully you didn't mix your bread dough too early or do that kind of thing, because then you might have overproofed it. So, an easy looking oven is actually more complex than modern ovens today.
Wow. So my mixture is looking nice and golden thanks to those egg yolks. What do we do next?
So what we're going to do next is we're going to add our nutmeg and our salt into this mixture. And I already have my nutmeg already pre-grated, but you can grate to order. And also we're adding that salt to react a little bit with the eggs.
So guys, this is the whole nutmeg. Obviously, this is what they would have been using, right, in the 18th century. But I too have pre-grated nutmeg that I'll be using, but they smell amazing. Good to know. All right, how much nutmeg do we need, Justin?
Okay, so it's about a teaspoon of nutmeg and then a teaspoon of salt. And a teaspoon of nutmeg is probably like a quarter of the actual whole nutmeg.
Okay. Okay, getting my salt. Justin, anything special about, the sourcing of salt back then? I know that, right now, we've got, kosher salt, there's pink Himalayan sea salt, there's Celtic sea salt, there's all these, there's iodine in table salt. Like any insights on, what they would have been using or anything special about it?
The thing with salt back then, it's very expensive. It's in the same boat as like sugar. That's why most of the recipes, you'll see are for extravagant cakes and things like that. They're for, upper class families that had the money to buy sugar, to buy salt. And sourcing for salt, a lot of it was imported. There was also underground salt mines as well, but it was one of those things that it was quite expensive back then.
Got it. So we did have just another question come in on the chat. It says, can you tell us a little bit about the spices in American Heritage? Well, yes, I sure can. So I'm the senior brand manager, as I mentioned earlier, for American Heritage Chocolate. So I have had the pleasure of working on this brand and working on recipe development, helping with all of the research that brought us this great product. So the flavors that you're tasting in American Heritage are unlike anything that you've tasted before because it's pure dark chocolate with vanilla, cinnamon, orange, red pepper, nutmeg, and sugar, and a little bit of salt. And again, these are all ingredients that were used in early colonial chocolate making. So we have different receipts. So receipts are what recipes used to be called. So we, the team here at Mars did a huge research project back in 2005 where we looked at all kinds of chocolate makers' receipts, and we actually came up with this specific recipe based on the prevalence and the popularity of the ingredients that we were seeing. So so those are already all mixed in with your American Heritage chocolate. So when you bake with it, you're going to taste that cinnamon, that chili pepper. You're going to smell the citrus. You're going to smell the anise, like all sorts of beautiful, rich flavors. It's my favorite thing to bake with at the holidays. Just think about those flavors and how they bring those holiday memories. So folks are also asking, can it be used in any recipe? Yes. So we actually on our website have sweet and savory recipes. So think about cookies, cupcakes, barbecue sauce, chili, mole. And we also have recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we have waffles, we've got soups and stews, and we have got all kinds of amazing desserts. So Justin, I know you've tried a lot of those. So yeah, it's really easy. It's what's great about the product too is that if you have a favorite recipe, our product replaces any chocolate one-to-one. So any baking chocolate that you have in a recipe that you've done before, just if you want to swap it out with American Heritage to give it a little zing, it's as easy as 1-to-1 ratio. Back to you, Justin. My mixture is looking good, smelling good too.
So next we're going to add our heavy cream. So you can go ahead and pour that in and put it on like a low setting to spin.
Okay, let me get the low setting going. Okay, and how much heavy cream, Justin?
So it's a half a cup.
Okay.
And what this is going to do is it's going to add a little bit of moisture and richness to the eggs already. And the reaction of those eggs and the milk or in the cream is going to provide just that nice little richness, velvety texture that won't make it too heavy, but heavy enough that you'll taste all the flavors. And it doesn't need much to be mixed in. Just a couple little spins, because next we're going to add our chocolate.
Excellent. Well, guys, everyone's shooting in the questions on the chat. This is awesome. So next question was, is the American Heritage block the same formula as the new grated baking chocolate? So the American Heritage grated baking chocolate is the same as our solid chocolate. So we have tasting squares, tablet bars. This is just that very same chocolate grated up. So those of you who know about our grated block, I love that we've got some fans who've been around with us for a long time. You sat there and you had to slave to grate that chocolate down. Well, we've made it easy for you and it's just now in this bag. So yes, it is the same as our solid chocolate, just already pre-ground for you. Back to you, Justin.
All right, so I just added in the chocolate and we want to mix that on low as well, just to incorporate everything. And if you feel the need to just to speed it up to get the mixture off of your paddle, you can go ahead and do that. And what it should look like, it should look a little bit like cookies and cream Oreos.
Nice. Justin, how much chocolate are we adding in?
We're adding in 1/3 of a cup.
Okay. I'm a little behind you because like I said earlier, I'm making a big old mess. So I've got my handy rags so I'm having to take care of some of that. So two-thirds cup of the chocolate, you say?
Yep.
Okay.
And we can scrape the sides to incorporate everything and get everything mixed. And a good way to do, if you like to do this kind of in a hurry or you're kind of last minute, what you can do is you can put the ingredients in these great little prep cups right here that actually have measurements on the side, and they're reusable. And you can actually put a top on it and stick it in your fridge so everything's all prepped out for the next day. If you have to make it in a rush, if you're getting home from work, you can measure out everything the day before and then just wait on your softened butter.
Okay. Okay, so mine is getting close. You know, probably like everyone at home, I'm having to stop every once in a while and clear my little mixing paddle, get all of the excess ingredients off. So let me get this going. Everybody, it's really probably one of your best tools when you're baking is a spatula, especially when you're using a stand mixer like this. So make sure when you're using your stand mixer that you get in there with your spatula and scrape the sides and scrape the bottom, because some of those ingredients will settle if you don't keep that mixture nice and mixed up. So make sure that you're pausing every now and then to load up and get all those ingredients incorporated. Okay, Justin, I had somebody ask in the chat, can you please hold up your bowl to show us what the mixture should look like?
Yep. Okay.
Excellent. So it is really kind of cookies and creamy.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit behind. Have we added our flour yet?
No, so we're about to do that next.
Okay.
And we're going to do that in increments. You know, we don't want to dump it all in right away. And you can pre-sift your flour to, you know, just to prevent clumps and that kind of thing. But a half a cup at a time. It's 2 cups total. But a half a cup at a time, or you can, you know, kind of have it measured out and then just sort of spoon it in while the mixer's going. And it'll tighten up, but don't fear when we add the egg whites. The mixture will come back together because this is a thick version because it's very egg rich.
Okay, I'm starting to get mine in there.
Okay. might have to turn up the mixer just a bit to like 2 or 3 if you're using a KitchenAid, just so everything gets incorporated.
So Justin, one of the things that I know that brought you on this journey in historic foodways is the fact that you became a Mount Vernon Fellow. Can you tell us what that means and what you did as part of that fellowship at Mount Vernon?
Yeah, so the fellowship program at Mount Vernon is run through the Fred W. Smith National Library for the study of George Washington. And basically scholars from all over, and even some non-scholars like myself. Like you're not required to have a PhD or anything to apply, but you choose a topic that has to do with either the life or the time period of George Washington, and you get invited in to do work at the library and do archival on research, and they can open up the vault, which holds some of Washington's manuscripts and letters, and there's all sort of interesting tidbits that I found, and my project was foodways and how it affected not only Mount Vernon, but the colonies at the time in general, and how things changed. And foodways, if you don't know or unfamiliar with that word, foodways is the social, cultural, and economic impact of a certain topic. So in the case of food, it's how it was moved back and forth, imported, exported, and written about and accounted for. So I was really looking at account books and ledgers that Washington and his secretary later in life, Tobias Lear, wrote of his transactions. And it's just fascinating on how many things, including chocolate, that are involved in his life at Mount Vernon and even outside.
Yeah, I know in the research that my team did, we found that he was drinking chocolate as a beverage and as a breakfast meal. So he drank a cup of chocolate for breakfast. And we also have documentation that Martha Washington was actually brewing a chocolate tea. So she was using those cocoa shells and brewing a chocolate tea at Mount Vernon. So she liked her chocolate a little lighter than his heavy breakfast of chocolate that he would have every morning.
Right.
Okay, so my dough is really thick right now. Is that right?
Yep, so it should be pretty thick, like almost borderline like you're about to make cookies.
Yep.
It should
it's
look
looking
like
pretty thick.
Yep, and at this point, what we want to do is get everything off of the paddle attachment, or you can look at it by yourself and making this and nobody's watching. So we want to get everything off of there, and then we're going to switch this attachment, but we're going to take the bowl off first, because we really want to like fold that together and make sure if any flour is sticking on the side. We really just want to get every little bit of it out there, and we want to transfer it into a different bowl.
Okay. I'm actually going to keep mine in my bowl, Justin, because I have a hand mixer that I'm going to use with our egg whites.
Yep, that's perfect.
So you say it's okay to lick the bowl, right?
Yep. And just to see the consistency, it's that stiff that it's sticking onto my spatula. That's what you're looking for. Never fear, it won't be that thick whenever you're putting it into your cake mold later. And we just want to clean everything out because we're going to put our egg whites in here next. And if you're doing it separate, that's the next step we're going to tackle together, is whipping those egg whites till there's stiff peaks.
I just double checked and I don't have any shells in here, but it was a hard task. All right, Justin, while we get our egg whites whipping, some folks have asked, how did you build that oven? Like, what was the process? What research did you do? And then, because you actually built it yourself, right?
So I designed it, and then I came across the research from it on a through some archival research in a small town in Georgia that was known for these great bakers and bread making. And somebody wrote about it, and they actually drew a little sketch of it. And I actually found this after I had already started having my oven being built. And it actually lined up pretty well. You know, there were 5 to 6 foot deep. They were 3.5 to 4 foot wide. And, you know, the bottom was made from either wood or rock buildup, and it matched perfectly for what I was doing. So I think that might have been a sign that I was on the right track. But it's made from clay and mortar and mud. And in South Carolina, where I live, there's rice straw. And, you know, if you're any other place, you probably would have used wheat straw to act as but significant rice straw and rice grown there. We decided to use that to be historically accurate.
Excellent. So I'm going to start whisking. It's kind of loud.
Okay.
So how long does it typically take for egg whites to stiffen?
Usually 2 to 3 minutes if you're whipping them on high.
Okay, you go for it.
Yeah, the first step, they should be like sort of foaming up a little bit.
Did you say something? Did I miss it?
So they should be foaming up a little bit from the start.
Yeah,
and
you're
then,
foaming.
yeah, then you can continue on. That's how you know you're on the right track.
All right. You know what, Justin, we should have had a race. Stand mixer versus hand mixer. I didn't even think about that. I've got soft peaks over here. What about you?
I'm close. I'm close.
All right. So Justin, we had a comment from Stephanie in the chat, and she says, I used your chocolate and recipe for the chocolate cake for our 25th anniversary celebration last month. It was a big hit. Love the chocolate taste. Delicious. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much. That makes me happy. And happy anniversary. Happy 25th anniversary. That's awesome.
Okay, so the next step is taking the egg whites and folding them into your previous mixture with a spatula. And we're doing this to kind of aerate it and provide some more moisture to it. So you can kind of take a little bit at a time.
So a little bit of the egg at a time, you're saying?
Yeah, you can do a little bit at a time. So they kind of fold. And you'll see the egg whites kind of, they'll lose a little bit of their stiffness while this is all happening. But you should be folding it over, and the batter itself will loosen up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I used to always be very intimidated by folding because it's like you don't want to break that, all that hard work you did when you fluffed up those eggs. So I love that you shared that the egg whites are actually the leavener, because when I read the recipe originally, I was just like, oh, I'm not going to separate my eggs. That's too much work. But it's very important, obviously, in a recipe like this to follow the instructions, or else I would have had a really sad cake. All right, I am almost got all my eggs in there.
All right, so yeah, you notice the batter loosening up a little bit. It's still thick, but it should be a little bit lighter than what you ended with after the first step.
It is. Oh yeah, it's a lot easier to work with, but I'm definitely getting my arm workout today. That's for sure.
I mean, imagine in the 18th century having to beat these eggs by hand.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Not having the use. There's some recipes that are so egg rich. Some of them call for 40 and 50 eggs.
Oh my gosh. So do you know when baking powder and baking soda came into modern day baking?
Yeah, it was about commercially in the mid 19th century. Both kind of leaveners were discovered, and they were available before, but only to pharmaceutical and chemist types. They weren't really applied to culinary items until the mid 19th century.
Okay. Justin, I'm going to show you and everybody at home what mine looks like. Does it need a little more love? What do you think?
What mine looks like, and you can tell.
Yours is a little creamier than mine. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, if you just go on the bottom and kind of scrape up, like in this motion of folding towards away from you. Sorry.
Got it. Okay, I feel like I'm good now.
Okay, so next we're going to have to get your cake pan ready, which the best form I think for this is a type like a bundt cake type. Back then they referred to those kind of pans as like patty pan molds. So I have this Nordic ware pan like this. It's nice and light. Some of them are heavier. I love the shape of that. That's
this
awesome.
One's like psychedelic, right?
Yeah.
So what do we do with our pans? Do we need to grease these babies?
Yep, we do. Just from experience, I know one of the best, non-stick sprays is one that usually contains flour in it. So it's like a mix of a canola oil / flour, just because it helps with the edges. But if you want to totally be 18th century and use some lard or use some butter, that'll work too. Just make sure all the nooks and crannies of this pan are covered.
So Justin, I actually use coconut oil because I just love that little flavor pop. We did just have a question come up in the chat. Folks want to know if they don't have a bundt pan, can they use another pan?
Sure. You can use a loaf pan, pretty much anything that you can make or put in your oven. You can put this or portion it. Even like a muffin tin would be great. Usually everybody has one of those. You can make little miniature pound cakes. It's great for small get-togethers and things like that. But yeah, pretty much any, and the cooking time will just vary depending on your container. The 45 minutes or so, that's more of a guideline. It might be 40, it might be an hour, just referencing your oven and the way your oven works. Like in my bake oven, my clay oven, a thing like this usually takes about 17 minutes. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'm liking this idea of a clay oven even more. I mean, more and more. It sounds like things are just a whole lot faster. So add me to your list of interested folks. I got a smoker out there. I think I need a clay oven right next to it.
Yeah. Yep. And we built one on the grounds of Mount Vernon this past spring down at the Pioneer Farm to sort of, incorporate foodways from that clay oven that were popular on merchant mills and large-scale plantations and frontier forts. So to just incorporate that because, Washington was a big export of his famous superfine flour. So just to add to that, we built an exact copy of the oven that I have down on their farm.
Awesome. So are we pouring our batter into our greased bundt pan now?
Yep, and it might not pour, so you can kind of spatula it in. And you're going to want to do that, filling up all the little, cracks and crevices. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of smack the pan so it evens itself out.
Okay. Get out a little bit of our 2020 aggression out, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So Justin, you just said something that sparked a memory. You just talked about George Washington and flour. Now, they have a grist mill. Tell me about flour and what role it played at Mount Vernon.
So flour actually was his business, one of his major businesses after he got out of tobacco. In the 1760s, he switched. A lot of people were switching because they found out that tobacco, without rotation of crops, it really dried out the soil. So a lot of them switched to wheat. And, by the 1770s, Washington was exporting flour not only locally and regionally through Alexandria and Virginia to various bakers, but some of it was going to Portugal and basically across the Atlantic Ocean. Because back then the finer and whiter the flour, the higher the price it got. And it went through a process called bolting, which takes out, it not only takes out the bran, but it also sort of sifts the flour and makes the best product available. And he was doing this at a very high rate. After tobacco, it was straight wheat for him, and another business was the commercial fishery. So wheat played a very important role, and he was actually testing and experimenting with up to 14 different varieties of wheat.
Wow. All right. Well, Justin, we need to get this pan in the oven. So I'm going to pop.
Yep, there you go.
Here's what my kaleidoscope looks like, everyone. There's Justin. All right, so let's pop these in the oven because we're going to start making our sauce.
Yep.
Now, Justin, I know that we were talking about bake times. We're going to bake our cake for 45 minutes. Yep. And I know one of my favorite things to do, or one of the things that I learned from my mom, is to use toothpicks to make sure that the baking is done. So how do you test your baked goods to know that they're done?
I actually also use a toothpick, or a large skewer works great. You know, a very good tip somebody taught me a long time ago was you shouldn't use anything metal, because metal is naturally warm and you're going to feel that warmth, and it's not going to stick. Like if it still has batter in it, it's not going to stick to metal, which most stainless steel is like non-stick. So
Right.
toothpick or something made out of wood, you know, when you do that, it immediately pulls up any batter that hasn't been baked yet.
Excellent. So folks, have your toothpicks handy, because when your cake comes out in 45 minutes, we will have signed off at that point. So you're going to want to make sure that that toothpick comes out clean. But before we leave, we're actually going to work on the sauce. Now, Justin, do we need, you know, obviously we're not going to, our cake still has about 45 minutes to bake.
Right.
We're going to make the sauce now, but can we reheat it? Do we need to wait for the cake to cool before we put it on? What are we going to tell folks to do when we leave them today about their sauce?
So they should most definitely pop out their cake whenever they feel that it's done. They should pop it out of the mold and let it cool a little bit, because if not, it's going to dry out a little bit, and it's not going to take the sauce as well. And another tip for like the sauce, this can be made while it is in the oven baking, and you can just throw it on the range a little bit right before you're going to pour it, and it'll kind of reincorporate and remelt anything, and you can sort of whisk it back together to the way that it should be to pour over.
Well, and I know that, you know, when we had our little catastrophe with no gas this morning, you actually did make a cake in your oven. So we're going to make our sauce right now, but then you're going to show us how to pour it on. So let's get going.
All right. So you're going to want to add your heavy cream.
All right. How much heavy cream are we doing?
So it's 1 full cup.
Okay.
And then you're going to want to put that on like a medium kind of low heat, because we're going to put our chocolate in next. We're going to put in a half cup of chocolate, and we're going to wait until that sort of melts together with that cream.
So people who know me know that I love to add more chocolate. So is it okay if I actually use a cup of the chocolate with my cream?
Yep, most definitely.
Okay. Because more is more, right?
Yeah, actually the sauce can take as much as like a cup and a half. When I was researching the sauce, it kind of melds together. So, you know, if you want a thicker sauce, like the one that appeared on the front of the holiday baking guide, the way that kind of dripped over, you can add a little bit more. I wouldn't go as far as like 2 cups, but a cup and a half, I think, is like the max.
Okay, I'm going to go a cup. So, Justin, do we need to wait for the cream to be warm before we put the chocolate in?
You don't necessarily, because what you're going to do on that low heat, it can actually melt the chocolate while it's heating up the cream, or you can preheat your cream even in the microwave, which I also tested. You know, you can put it in there for a minute or so, and then put it on the stove and get your chocolate in there.
Excellent. So Justin, while we're waiting for our chocolate and our cream to melt, can you tell me how did you get into cooking? Do you have a favorite family memory, or how did you get into the cooking business? Because I know that you worked at a very famous, fabulous restaurant in South Carolina in Charleston, Husk, which I actually got to eat at last month, thanks to you. But you've been in food, it sounds like, your whole life. How did that get started?
So it was kind of a natural fit after a few attempts at playing college football and things like that. I sort of, you know, always had cooking in the background with my mom, who really cooks a lot, and, you know, made sure we all sat down for dinner every night. And also her mother, my grandmother, you know, she worked after school. She would work in her father's bakery and help make rolls. So she was a very big influence, especially around the holiday time when, they would start 2.5, 3 weeks out making copious amounts of different holiday cookies. And something that she would do is she would actually remember each member of their family, like their favorite cookie. And she would write it down. She would keep record of it in her cookbook of her manuscript, and write, this is Justin's favorite, this is Jason's favorite. And it was really a cool thing because my favorite was it was called Santa Surprise Snickers cookies, and it had a Snickers bar, a little mini Snickers bar baked into it. And it was just, those were my favorite. They were always a crowd pleaser, and I just really loved that recipe. And as you can see, this is her manuscript little receipt book with up in the corner there, you can see Justin's favorite.
Oh my gosh.
2001, 2002, 2003. So,
well, Justin, I'm going to need this recipe because I have a lot of Snickers lovers at my house. So I think I'm going to have to take, what did you call your grandma? Was she Nana? Was she Grandma? What was her name?
She was Grandma.
Okay, well, I'm going to take Grandma's recipe and make it for my Snickers lovers. For those of you who are watching with us, obviously you're a fan of American Heritage because you're on this video, but you may not know that we're actually part of Mars Wrigley. We are the largest confectionery company in the world, and we make favorite brands like M&M's, Twix, Dove, Starburst, Skittles, and Snickers, believe it or not. So I love that your favorite recipe growing up was actually a Snickers cookie, because we kind of like Snickers around here too.
So how's your sauce, Kelly? Has the chocolate melted in with the cream?
So one of the things that's so great about this grated chocolate is that it melts so evenly. I don't want to spill it on my floor, but I mean, it is looking pretty darn good. So now that I'm all melted, what do I do?
So what we're going to do is actually kind of a two-step thing. One of them actually has to do with the flavor of it and sort of an ode to the 18th century. And it'll actually cool down our sauce a little bit for the last step, which we'll add in 1 egg white. But we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of buttermilk. And I know everybody's saying, oh, buttermilk, like, why am I putting buttermilk in this? Well, you're doing this for 2 reasons. One, just think back of what milk and cream and those kind of dairy products tasted like in the 18th century. There was no refrigeration. So either you were taking it straight from the cow, or it might have had, a little bit of a sour flavor, which in this, it's going to build that flavor just a touch and give it that little tweak of sourness to kind of balance out the flavors. And what it's also doing is it's cooling down our sauce, which what we're going to do next is we're going to temper 1 egg white. And there's also a reason for this. It's because even though your sauce is still warm, we're going to add it in, and it should be like, kind of like warm to touch. It shouldn't be boiling. And we're going to add in this egg white and sort of whisk it in, and it'll make it thick, but it'll also add a little bit of richness to it and a little bit of depth with that buttermilk.
Okay, so 1 egg white into my sauce mixture, right?
Yep. And like I said, it should be, the sauce should be, warm to touch, but not like hot. So it should be about almost room temperature. And, after you take it off the stove, it should be pretty much there because of adding that buttermilk, that cold buttermilk. So you should notice the kind of viscosity of the sauce a little bit. It changes, it gets a little bit thicker.
Oh yeah, mine's gotten quite a bit thicker. It smells amazing. It's shiny.
Okay.
So I am gonna keep my sauce on the stovetop, not on heat. so that when my cake comes out, I'm going to be able to sauce it up. But I'm going to let you take it away. We have been having so much fun. We are right up. We've got 5 minutes left, Justin. So let's take it home.
Okay, so this is what your finished cake should look like. Maybe a little bit darker for that reason. But I'm going to show you how to kind of sauce it. And we're going to move this down just a touch so we can see it all happening.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes if you have a small pitcher, that would be great too. I like using a spoon.
What about a gravy boat?
A gravy boat would work great, especially if you're like presenting it for, guests or family at the holidays. You can just kind of pour it. But what I like to do is kind of do it in a series of.
I just happen to have one handy.
Oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that nice?
So what we're going to do is we're just going to drape it over top. And you could even pour from the pot.
It's all about just the creative expression that sauce takes on, right? Yep. There's no perfect. There's no right answer.
No, you can drizzle it. You can go back and forth. You can go in a circle. It's really just about letting it mold into that cake that's baked.
Well, Justin, this has been just so fun. Like I mentioned at the top, this is, we actually made the cover recipe of our historic holidays recipe book. This is free. It's downloadable on our website. So if you don't already have it, make sure to download it, because you can obviously find this recipe, but we also have chocolate biscuits, chocolate bread pudding, chocolate tart, and those chocolate rice waffles that I was talking about that I loved the very first time I met Justin. So y'all, thank you so much for being here for our first ever virtual cooking class. As you know, we have we've been featuring American Heritage chocolate here. Y'all have baked with our finely grated baking chocolate, but we also have a gourmet hot cocoa. We have tasting squares and tablet bars. And just for our database and for our fans, we actually have a 30% off of Amazon for these products all the way through the end of the year. We have never done a 30% off coupon before. So the link to Amazon in the email that you received today is going to take you to that special deal that is going to be running all the way through December 31st. So grab the book, grab the product, and make some of these yummy treats for your family this holiday season. And if you want to learn more about Justin and his clay oven, please visit Half Crown Bake House. Did I say that right?
Yep, you did.
All right. So y'all, thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday season from everybody at the American Heritage team. I speak on behalf of my whole team. We are so thankful that you're here with us, and have a happy holiday and a beautiful new year. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.